Chapter 121. Demonic River, Demonic Qi Overflowing. Who? The black gas suddenly flew up and penetrated the body of one of the Zhang clan martial Grand Masters. The martial Grand Master was caught off guard and allowed the black gas to enter. Ah! The martial Grand Master cried out miserably. His skin instantly turned jet black while his body lay on the ground trembling continuously. His eyes bulged as though he was a demon. Bang! Zhang Mingxun decisively pulled out his saber and chopped this martial Grand Master in half. The two halves of the body squirmed around as they struggled to merge back together. Duan Muqing sent an ice pillar at it before it stopped moving. This is demonic qi. The things floating on the top of the river are all demonic qi. This is a genuine demonic river. Zhang Mingxun looked at the river and said in horror, "After living for so long, I have never seen so much demonic qi." Demonic qi. The cultivators of the noble clans all took a deep breath, they were all astonished. Many of them here had taken part in demonic beast trial grounds. They all had some understanding of demonic qi, but they had never explored the core zone of these trial grounds. Thus, they have never seen demonic qi for themselves before. If all the black gases on the river, which lead to an unknown place, were demonic qi, then when they were all gathered together it would be very horrifying. Even the 7 great prohibited zones of the continent would not compare to it. The Gai Marquis muttered to himself for a long time before saying, "The situation is more complicated than I had thought. For there to be this much demonic qi, there must be a spatial tear leading to the demonic world that is not sealed. We should report this to the 3 holy grounds. Otherwise, there may be dire consequence." Hua Yunfei shook his head. "I don't think we need to. This is the final resting place of the ancient sages. How can there be a large spatial tear? This river appeared in the ancient era, and I believe the tear is not large. Just that it has been a long time and a large amount has been accumulated." Ji Chengkong said in an unusual manner, "I concur with Hua Yunfei's opinion. If there was a large spatial tear, the 3 holy grounds would have found it by now. It is rumored every holy ground has a treasure mirror for monitoring spatial tears. Yet, they have not found this place." Momentarily, everyone began discussing whether the demonic river was a result of a large spatial tear or not. The older cultivators leaned on the opinions of the Gai Marquis. The younger cultivators were clearly willing to take more risk and did not wish to back out easily. Kai. As everyone debated endlessly, there was a splash from the surface of the black water. Bats covered in the black gas leapt out of the river and flew towards the crowd. All the martial Grand Masters take a step back. The demonic qi on these demonic beasts is too dense. Ji Chengkong shouted as he frowned. Pu Si. A martial Grand Master took too long to retreat and was bitten by a bat-type demonic beast. He was instantly demonized and he gave off a black aura. He turned to the people beside him, attempting to kill them. The Gai Marquis raised his long spear and pierced the demonized martial Grand Master. A strand dragon qi penetrated his body and blasted him to bits. "You guys focus on killing the demonic beasts, I will deal with the demonized people. You must be fast. If they have been demonized for an extended period of time, they will be horrifyingly strong." Astral swordplay first move, responded Starlight. A boundless river of stars appeared behind Ji Chengkong. There were points of bright starlight appearing on his sword. When the bats came into contact with those points, they immediately exploded into bits. The people of the noble clans were being continuously demonized. Once that happened, the Gai Marquis and his subordinates killed them immediately. None of them showed any mercy. After a long time, countless demonic beast corpses littered the ground. This sudden fight ended in no time. However, everyone was scared witless, as though they just went through a large fight. Suddenly, Duan Muqing said, "Although the demonic qi on this demonic beast is very dense, it is not very strong. I believe it is likely the spatial tear is not very large." Indeed, if there were a large spatial tear, the demonic beasts they encountered, based on the demonic qi they saw, would be at least rank 6. They would not be as weak as these bats. Everyone considered Duan Muqing's opinion. After they took a tally of the deaths, they continued on their journey. Surprisingly, there were no more demonic beasts suddenly coming out. After walking downstream the Black River for more than 4 hours, they were blocked by the mountainside. The river went through a hole in the mountain side, flowing to an unknown place. Quickly, take a look at the other side. There seems to be a stone platform, a cultivator said and pointed to the other side just as everyone was dispirited at not being able to find the way. Ji Changkong looked in the direction he pointed. There was indeed a stone platform. The stone platform did not seem to be very high. There were steps leading up to it on all sides. At the top of the stone platform, there seemed to be something on it giving off a faint light. The sage's coffin might be there, it has to be there. I can feel the righteous chi of a sage, Hua Yunfei exclaimed joyfully. Everyone started to discuss how to cross the river. The river was just tens of meters wide, but it was not a distance anyone could leap over easily. Furthermore, even the martial saints did not dare to touch the demonic chi on the surface of the water. Finally, the 6 Hua clan martial saints worked together and sent out a holy river into the demonic river. It cleansed the surface of the river, at which point, the Duanmu clan martial saints quickly froze a path through the river. Everyone walked on the ice and rushed towards the opposite side, heading in the direction of the stone platform. Even though the stone platform did not seem far, the group walked for an hour before arriving at its foot. When they arrived at the stone platform, which they thought was not very tall, they discovered they were wrong. This stone platform was actually 1,000 meters tall. They were not able to see the other end of the platform. It felt like a road leading to heaven. That's right, it must be here. This is a small realm the sages developed, an old man said excitedly as he stared at the platform which seemed to extend into the sky. When the crowd heard this, they were astonished in their heart. They looked at the 1,000 meters tall stone platform and suddenly understood. If there was not small realm here, this stone platform would have pierced through the mountain above it. Hua Yunfei revealed an expression of joy and asked, "What are we waiting for? Let's go." After he spoke, he took the lead and headed up the stone platform which seemed to lead to heaven. Pooh! 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 All the disciples of the noble clans were not willing to lag behind. They followed quickly, and when they climbed 10 odd steps, they all felt something was wrong. They felt the weight on their feet was becoming heavier with each step. Every step they took expended a large amount of effort. Ji Changkong stopped and closed his eyes, carefully feeling everything. When he raised his leg, there were no obstructions, but when he landed on the stone platform, he immediately felt some of his energy disappear. After a long time, Ji Changkong opened his eyes and said, "Something is wrong here, every step we take consumes some essence. At first, we barely felt anything, after a while, it becomes obvious." When everyone heard his words, they stopped. After carefully feeling it for themselves, they all had extremely shocked expressions. They looked at the seemingly endless steps. There was still a long way to go before they reached the top. Hua Yunfei said, "This is already the final hurdle, we can't just give up. In the worst case, we just leave after we have exhausted all our essence." Ji Changkong revealed a bitter smile. "That's where the problem lies. Try walking back, just a step will do." When a martial grand master heard him, he tried going down. The moment he landed his feet, he felt a large amount of his essence being absorbed. He panicked without any reason and wanted to leave this place immediately. He took a deep breath and jumped down. To the horror of everyone present, they saw Cultivator's body withered up slowly. Finally, when he landed, he became a set of white bones. All the skin and meat on him were gone. What is going on? Why is the consumption of life force so great? Is this stone platform a demon? A Zhang clan martial grand master asked while his entire body trembled in incomparable fear. The faces of all the noble clan disciples went pale. To think the stone platform was so horrifying. Is this the legendary path to heaven? It is said, it is easy to go to heaven but difficult to get out of it. Ji Changkong frowned. Any martial grand masters without an inherited martial spirit can leave now. Do not jump down, you will not survive doing so. Very soon, all the martial grand masters slowly headed down. Even though there were only 10 odd steps, it felt like a journey of thousands of meters. Bang! A martial grand master reached the 3rd step from the bottom and could no longer take it. There was a loud bang and he turned into a pile of white bones. The people beside were utterly demoralized with fear. Some of them could not resist jumping when they saw there were only 2 steps left. In the end, they, too, exploded into bits. When all the martial Grand Masters reached the bottom, they heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. They quickly sat on the ground and worked on recovering their essence. Aside from the successors of the noble clans, only martial saints remained on the stone platform. The Gai Marquis looked at the top of the platform and muttered, "There are at least 10,000 steps. Even if we make it up, how are we going to get down?" These thoughts lingered in everyone's heart like a huge pit, one which they would not be able to cross. Up until now, they had not exhausted much essence. However, as they climbed higher, it would require even more essence to come down. The shadow of death lingered in everyone's hearts. Ji Chengkong said calmly, 1,000 years ago, after the Thunder Emperor disappeared, there were no other martial emperors, there might not have even been a martial sage. Now, such a great opportunity is presented to us. Although the odds of surviving this are not high, it might not necessarily be impossible. All the great emperors from the past did not achieve their success in a smooth sailing manner. After Ji Chengkong spoke, he took the lead and headed up. The people here were all talented geniuses, they were not willing to lag behind and become the stepping stones for others. They did not hesitate as they followed along. Along the way, the group saw countless white bones on the stone platform. The higher they climbed, the more they saw. The stone platform was literally filled with white bones. The group ended up not being able to avoid them and could only crush the bones under their feet as they walked. As they continued further, purple bones started to appear. The group exclaimed in shock, "These are martial emperor experts. Just how many experts are buried here? Even martial emperors were not able to escape this fate of death." Ji Chengkong did not speak as he continued to walk forward. The crowd slowly followed behind him. Now that they had gotten this far, there was no turning back. A Zhang clan martial saint suddenly exclaimed in astonishment, "There seems to be someone in front." Everyone raised their head to take a careful look. About 100 steps in front, there seemed to be a faint human figure, his back was facing the crowd. Why is there someone here? The Duanmu clan accidentally opened the underground palace entrance. There is no other way in aside from that one. How did this person get here? Furthermore, he is in front of us. The more they thought about it, the weirder it was. Ji Chengkong grasped his sword in his hand. A resplendent starry sky appeared in his eyes. A boundless river of stars stirred up in his body in preparation for an attack. The people behind became more alert as they waited for an opportunity. When they walked forward, they managed to clearly see the figure. They all inhaled a deep breath of cold air. That was a headless corpse. There was a sword behind him and countless white bones at his feet. There were even a few sets of purple skeletons. However, he still stood proudly. It was unknown how many years had passed. There was a feeling of time on his aura. A faint pressure extended out in his surroundings. The starry sky in Ji Chengkong's eyes faded away. He said in shock, "This is the corpse of a martial sage. Look at his clothes, he should not be from the ancient era. Even a martial sage died here. What exactly are the origins of this stone platform?" One of the martial saints asked in horror. A full-fledged martial sage was someone who could split the mountains and overturn the seas. Ji Chengkong shook his head. "Let's not think about it too much. Someone clearly killed this martial sage. He did not die because of the stone platform. Otherwise, his corpse would have become a pile of white bones long ago." Just at this moment, Hua Yunfei had an agitated expression when he walked to the front of the corpse. He saw the symbol of a holy river on the collar of the corpse's clothes. He loudly exclaimed, "This is a senior of my Hua clan." After he spoke, he carefully searched the area around the corpse. He pushed aside a pile of bones and found a small row of words on the stone platform. He read it in a soft voice, "The path of Hua Tianyu ends here. If any Hua clan descendants find this, please leave quickly." Hua Tianyu, isn't that the third clan head of the Hua clan, the most talented clan head of the Hua clan? He disappeared in his later years. Some people guessed he had become a martial emperor. I did not expect that he died here, someone from the side said in shock. Hua Yunfei said indifferently, "This corpse is the ancestor of my Hua clan. I believe none of you would fight with me over the things on his body." After he spoke, he prepared to remove the spatial ring from Hua Tianyu's finger. A martial sage's spatial ring would contain many treasures. Hu Kai. A black sword blocked his path. Ji Changkong laughed coldly. Hua Yunfei, have you forgotten the agreement we made earlier? If we find any treasure, regardless of the situation, we will split it according to the clans. You won't go back on your words, right? Hua Yunfei's face turned cold. What do you mean? This is my Hua clan head. His things originally belonged to my Hua clan. Why should it be distributed to you? Zhang Mingxun snorted coldly. This is an ownerless body. He died 1,000 years ago in the wilderness. His body itself is a treasure. Everyone has put in the effort for us to reach this place, why should only the Hua clan benefit? The other noble clans also did not want to let the Hua clan gain such an advantage. Although, logically this corpse did indeed belong to the Hua clan, however, when there are benefits to be gained, logic loses its meaning. Hua Yunfei had no means of stopping everyone here, so he was not able to curb everyone's greed. Hua Yunfei laughed out of infuriation. He even said, "Good. 3 times, Ji Changkong, I'll remember this." Zhang Mingxun, don't think the Ji clan can shield you forever. He pushed aside the sword in front of him and removed Hua Tianyu's spatial ring. With just a thought, all the things contained in there came out. Walala. A big pile of objects came out. Spirit stones, medicinal pills, spirit weapons, martial techniques, and battle armor. All of these belongings covered the stone platform. The exceptionally large pile of spirit stones caught everyone's attention. Under this pile of inferior grade spirit stones, they even saw some medial grade spirit stones. These were genuine treasures. These noble clan disciples only had inferior grade spirit stones at most. It was impossible for them to be holding medial grade spiral stones. Spirit stones were ore found in nature. Not only was the spiritual energy in them pure, but there was also a generous amount of them. To low-leveled cultivators, it could raise their cultivation by a grade. High-leveled cultivators could quickly replenish their exhausted essence. However, there were very few spirit stone mines in the Great Qin nation. Every noble clan only controlled 1 or 2 spirit stone mines. Furthermore, they were not high-quality mines. It was impossible to obtain superior grade spirit stone. Even medial grade spirit stones were rare. Ji Changkong said indifferently, "That's the way, Brother Hua. With these spirit stones, there is more hope of us reaching the peak of the stone platform." After he spoke, they started to sort out the objects from the spatial rings. Suddenly, he saw a rusted, broken sword. He smiled. "Brother Hua, there is no need to split this sword, you can keep this. This should be a broken holy weapon. You will gain a lot if you can repair this completely." Hua Yunfei casually tossed aside the broken sword Ji Changkong threw to him. He said angrily, "Ji Changkong, don't go too far." Ji Changkong smiled faintly, and he stated in an indifferent tone, "Don't be angry, Brother Hua. I have already sorted out everything. There are a total of 10 medial grade spirit stones, 100 inferior grade spirit stones, 3 earth-ranked martial techniques, 1 earth-ranked battle armor, and 5 bottles of all sorts of rank 6 medicinal pills." Everyone was astonished. The belongings a martial sage carried were indeed horrifying. When added together, the value of these items was even more than what the Zhang clan had accumulated for hundreds of years. Ji Changkong removed the martial technique manuals and handed them to Hua Yunfei. "These are your Hua clan's martial techniques. Naturally, they should not be leaked. Keep them well, I will not count them as part of the spoils." Hua Yunfei had a sullen expression as he held onto the martial technique manuals. No one would feel right when they saw the treasures of their clan head distributed to outsiders. While the Hua clan's people wore sullen expressions, the group of individuals did not waste any time in picking everything up from the ground. Although the objects in Hua Tianyu's spatial ring were all valuable, the most eye-catching were the 10 medial grade spirit stones. The other things may be considered as most valuable treasures when placed in a small clan, but they were not rare in the noble clans. Only the medial grade spirit stones were rare. When needed, these would be able to save their lives. Finally, the Hua clan obtained 3 medial grade spirit stones and the other noble clans obtained 2 medial grade spirit stones each. Because of Ji Changkong's presence, the Zhang clan gained 1 medial grade spirit stone. After the treasures were distributed, the group continued on their way. They stepped across Hua Tianyu's corpse and continued forward. As they went forward, everyone felt agonized by each step they took. The amount of essence consumed with each step became even more intense. The corpses on the stone platform became even more horrifying. They no longer saw white bones, they were all purple bones of martial emperors. Every skeleton caused them to shiver even though it was not cold. After another 100 steps, the crowd saw a corpse standing tall before them. The aura on this corpse was even denser than Wat Tianyu's. Even though it was just standing there and had been dead for an unknown amount of time, it still caused people to feel pressure. This is one of the Ji clan's heads, Ji Chengkong suddenly said agitatedly. The head of this corpse was chopped off, but the clothing on the corpse revealed its identity. He started to frantically push aside the bones on the ground. A small row of words appeared in front of him. He read them out in a soft voice. The path of Ji Haoyun ends here. If any Ji clan descendants find this, please leave quickly. Ji Haoyun was also one of the Ji clan's heads and was revered as a genius. Back then, he was already 1 foot in the martial emperor realm. He was from the same time as Wat Tianyu. It was unexpected he ended up as well. Suddenly, Hua Yunfei laughed loudly. Haha, Ji Chengkong, I'm sure you never expected this to happen. He took a large step forward and pushed Ji Chengkong to the side. Ji Chengkong glared at him in anger. Hua Yunfei, what are you trying to do? Ji Chengkong had been stuck at the peak of martial Grand Master for many years. When he saw the Sage Dao comprehension picture earlier, he gained enlightenment and broke through to martial saint. He did not care about Hua Fei at all. Hua Yunfei smiled coldly. If you don't distribute out all the treasures of this person, I, Hua Yunfei, will fight you with my life on the line. No one will be able to continue further. Ji Chengkong smiled coldly and said in a frosty voice, Hua Yunfei, are you seeking death? The 6 Zhang clan martial saints and the 7 Ji clan martial saints all stepped forwards. They were filled with killing intent as they glared at Hua Yunfei. Hua Yunfei led the 6 martial saints behind him and glared at Ji Chengkong without fear. There was no intention of backing down in his eyes. The current atmosphere was very tense. A huge battle would ignite with just the tiniest of spark. Suddenly, Duan Muqing spoke. I feel this place is not simple. I'm sure if we keep walking forward, we will see the corpses of every noble clan's martial sages. When Ji Chengkong heard this, he was stumped for words. He turned around to look at the endless steps in front of him. Countless bright stars appeared in his eyes, a boundless river of stars appeared behind him. Astral swordplay, eternal light. Ji Chengkong shouted lightly, and the star that represented him in the boundless river of stars suddenly shone brightly. The resplendent starlight rushed to the sky. It was extremely blinding, causing people not to dare look at it. The light flickered, and Ji Chengkong pierced forward with his sword. A glaring white light fired out above the stone steps. In an instant, the scene to the front appeared before everybody's eyes. Kai! Everyone took in a deep breath of air. Bones filled the stone step, densely packed together, causing everyone to be dazzled. Separated by a certain distance, there were headless corpses standing tall. Everyone felt their scalp go numb. The shock of so many decapitated martial sages was too much. Why were there so many headless bodies? It was not strange for there to be 1 or 2 clan heads, but there were countless headless corpses. This was very astonishing. All of these were martial sages, so why were all their heads chopped off? From another direction of the stone steps, Chu Chaoyun carried his sword behind him and slowly ascended the stone steps. The whole weapon behind him gave off a faint glow. This allowed him to walk as though he was on flat ground. He was walking at a very leisurely pace, in an incomparably relaxed manner. Seeing the glaring light rush into the sky, Chu Chaoyun stopped in his tracks. He paused for a moment before smiling gently. What a powerful martial technique. Unfortunately, it will be useless after it rises. Beside the inky river, Xiao Chen slowly woke up. He opened his eyes and saw a worried Su Xiaoxiao and Jin Dabao. He felt a warmth in his heart and smiled faintly. Thank you. Su Xiaoxiao said, are you fine? You fell earlier. You scared us. Jin Dabao's eyes were filled with light as he ran over. He smiled. Brother Xiao, I saw you carving the golden lion king's horn earlier. Are you able to mass-produce this secret treasure? This fatty truly only had money in his eyes. Xiao Chen got up and ignored him. He inspected his body and did not find any major injuries, he only overdrafted his essence. He asked, "How long was I unconscious? Did that group of people chase us?" Su Xiaoxiao replied, "Almost 2 hours. None of the noble clan's people chased after us. Dabao saw them heading downstream. We were debating earlier whether to follow them." Xiao Chen stretched his body and felt his body was completely fine. He said indifferently, "We follow. The golden coffin of the sage has not yet been found. If we don't go, this trip will have been in vain." The fatty laughed loudly. "I knew Brother Xiao would want to follow them. I have already scouted ahead. They followed this river downstream before ascending a 1,000-meter tall stone platform. I even saw that fellow, Chu Chaoyun, sneaking around alone. He was not with them." A 1,000-meter tall stone platform. Xiao Chen frowned, as he thought, if the fatty did not see wrong, that must be a small realm created by the sages. Otherwise, such a situation would not occur. Furthermore, since the appearance of Chu Chaoyun, his strength was a mystery. The others came with a large entourage, but he came alone. Xiao Chen shook his head and recollected his thoughts. "Let's go. If we don't go now, it really will be too late." The three of them quickly headed over. Very soon, they arrived at the place where the noble clans killed the bat-type demonic beasts. They saw the demonic beasts' corpses, and Xiao Chen stopped in his tracks. Xiao Chen used his lunar shadow saber to cut up one of the demonic beasts' corpses. He then thought for a while, and he walked over to the riverside. He saw the black gas covering the river's surface. He was startled. A dense demonic qi actually covered the water. The sage's remnant. Why is there so much demonic qi gathered here? Is this the sage's remnant or the devil's remnant? Xiao Chen thought doubtfully to himself. He kept feeling something was off with this ancient remnant's appearance. "Young Master Xiao, what are you thinking?" Su Xiaoxiao asked curiously when she saw Xiao Chen looking at the river in silence. Xiao Chen awoke from his thoughts and smiled faintly. "Nothing. Let's go." The three of them continued on their journey, using their respective movement techniques. Xiao Chen was astonished at the fact that the fatty was not any slower than Xiao Chen despite his rotund body. He wondered what movement technique he was using. Seeing Xiao Chen look at him in astonishment, the fatty opened up his fan and laughed smugly. Xiao Chen could not bear to see the fatty behave in a cocky manner, and quickly looked away. "We have arrived. The stone platform is across the river. Once we cross the river, we will be there." After they reached the mountainside, the fatty stopped and pointed to the stone platform across the river. He said, "They should be up there." Xiao Chen looked at the demonic qi filling the river's surface and said, "We can't cross it directly. This black gas is demonic qi. Just touching a little of it could cause us to demonize." After he spoke, he took out a jade bottle from the universe ring. This jade bottle was a low-grade spatial treasure like the universe ring. The space it contained was huge, but it could only contain liquids and gases. It was something Xiao Chen made out of boredom in Whitewater City. He pointed the jade bottle at the river end. To Jin Dabao and Su Xiaoxiao's astonishment, the black river water started to churn. It absorbed the demonic qi from the surface of the water. After a long time, the black river's surface became one that did not have any demonic qi on it. Xiao Chen put away the jade bottle and said hurriedly, "Let's cross." Xiao Chen had the gravity spell and could fly across. The fatty and Su Xiaoxiao leapt across on the water surface before reaching the opposite shore. After they arrived, the fatty immediately moved closer to Xiao Chen. He smiled. "Brother Xiao, what was that earlier? Will you let this fat brother take a look?" Xiao Chen did not reject him. This jade bottle was not some valuable treasure. Furthermore, its function was limited. It was just something he made out of boredom. The workmanship was very coarse. There was no problem with letting the fatty take a look. The fatty held it in his hand and fondled it admiringly. After a long time, he returned the bottle. He asked, "Why do I feel you made this bottle? Furthermore, it was coarsely done." Xiao Chen was very astonished. This fatty's eyes are very sharp. He did not reply his question and looked directly at the stone platform. He could already feel the righteous qi it was giving off. Just as they approached the stone platform, the fatty suddenly said, "There seem to be some people seated cross-legged." Xiao Chen felt something was wrong. The people seated cross-legged did not appear to be angry. The sound of their movements was very loud, but this group did not react at all. Something is wrong. These people seem to be dead. Xiao Chen immediately walked over after he spoke. There were many white skeletons lying on the ground. As for the people seated cross-legged, their eyes were shut, as though they were asleep. The fatty pushed one lightly with his hand, and he immediately fell over. Jin Dabao's expression suddenly turned grave. He looked at the piles of white bones and looked at the noble clan cultivators seated cross-legged. He frowned. These cultivators just died. Furthermore, the manner they died in is very strange. Aside from the corpses of the noble clan's people, the Gai Marquis subordinates, the Golden Guards, were all dead for an unknown reason too. They fell to the ground with a light push. The fatty suddenly laughed loudly. Before Xiao Chen could react, he saw the fatty moving like a hurricane and stripping the Gai Marquis's Golden Guards, removing their Earth-ranked battle armor. Very soon, the fatty extracted more than 100 sets of battle armor. The fatty took a careful look, and his expression changed. He asked, why have all these sets of armor lost all their spirituality? What happened? After he spoke, he casually took out a knife and stabbed the battle armor. A small crack immediately appeared on the golden armor before it crumbled apart. Su Xiaoxiao revealed an amazed expression. She picked up a set of golden battle armor and carefully inspected it. After a long time, she said, the moonstone alloyed into the battle armor seems to have been completely absorbed by something. When Xiao Chen and Jin Dabao heard this, they were amazed in their hearts. They had never heard of such a thing happening before. The moonstone is a miraculous stone of heaven and earth. It contains the Taoes of nature. How did it get absorbed away? Xiao Chen cast his gaze on the stone platform. He did his best to extend his spiritual sense out, but he was not able to. In this small realm, it was difficult for his spiritual sense even to leave his body. The fatty muttered, never mind, let's go up. If we don't, we will never know the cause. Although Xiao Chen felt something was wrong, he could not extend his spiritual sense out to check. He could only agree with the fatty's opinion. The three of them stepped onto the stone platform. Who? The instant the three of them climbed on the stone platform, the azure dragon in Xiao Chen's body, the golden folding fan in the fatty's hands, and Su Xiaoxiao's zither all suddenly gave off an aura. These three auras merged and formed a small barrier surrounding the three of them. Su Xiaoxiao commented in astonishment, this is the holy weapon's self-protection. There must be something horrifying beneath this stone platform. Otherwise, the holy weapon would not activate its self-protection. Xiao Chen looked at the seemingly endless steps. He suddenly felt a strange chill. The three of them continued forward in silence. They reached a point of no return. After 100 steps, densely packed skeletons started to appear on the stone steps. The group stepped on the bones, causing crushing sounds. That caused one's scalp to go numb. Rumble. The lunar shadow saber leapt around repeatedly in the universe ring. Xiao Chen was startled. He stopped in his tracks and looked around at his surroundings. A broken sword covered in rust appeared before him. What's this? Another sub-divine weapon containing the battle sage origins. Xiao Chen wondered to himself after he picked up the broken sword. He could not make out anything strange about the sword. The lunar shadow saber leapt around even more in the universe ring, as though it wanted to come out of the ring. Xiao Chen had never encountered such a situation before. Although he did not understand what was happening, Xiao Chen placed the broken sword in the universe ring and continued. It was clear that this broken sword had some relation with the Thunderwood sword. After they trod on countless white bones, the three of them arrived at Hua Tianyu's headless body. The fatty found the words written on the ground. Then he searched the body. Damn it, there is nothing here at all. This martial sage was actually so poor, the fatty cursed out in a low voice. Su Xiaoxiao saw a mark on his right forefinger, obviously left by a ring. She said indifferently, there should have been a spatial ring there. It must have been removed by someone recently. Xiao Chen ignored the fatty's words and carefully inspected the wound on Hua Tianyu's neck. This was a sword wound. Hua Tianyu's head was chopped off. How did a martial sage get killed by someone? Who exactly is this powerful? To be able to kill martial sages like killing dogs. Is it the Thunder Emperor? Xiao Chen thought curiously. Suddenly, he thought of a problem. Fatty, look around and see if his head is here. Jin Dabao recovered his wits and looked at the headless corpse. He felt it was strange as well. He searched together with Xiao Chen, but after a long time, they were still unable to find a solitary head. That's strange, where did the head go? Jin Dabao asked, filled with doubts. Further above the stone platform, Ji Chengkong and the rest distributed the treasures from another martial sage. Afterward, they sat down cross-legged and held an inferior grade spirit stone in their hands, rapidly recovering the essence in their body. Along the way, not only did they find the corpses of many noble clans' ancestors, they even saw the Emperor Yingzi's corpse. They were all martial sages from 1,000 years ago, people of the same generation. Ji Chengkong was the first to complete his recovery. He tossed aside the dull spirit stone. He saw they were getting closer to the stone platform's peak, but he was not excited about it. Instead, there was an indescribable shadow shrouding his thoughts. After a while, the other noble clan's people got up. The further they climbed, the greater was the exhaustion of essence. If they did not have sufficient spirit stones, they would not have been able to reach this area. Let's go, there are 500-odd more steps. Let's try to do it in one breath. Ji Chengkong demanded indifferently. At this moment, he was already able to see a corner of the peak. After he spoke, he led the way like before. His sharp eyes continued to stare ahead. There were countless stars appearing in his eyes. Every step he took, a star would dim. After a moment, even more stars were created. If someone who understood the techniques of the Ji clan were here, he would be shocked. Ji Chengkong was cultivating his morning star martial spirit during such a situation. Everyone slowly climbed the stone steps. Every step they took was one step closer to the peak. The pressure they shouldered increased, as though a layer of a formless resistive force was stopping them. Bang! A Ji clan martial saint took a step up, and before his foot landed, he exploded and turned into dust. Ji Chengkong did not turn back, his expression did not change at all. He just held an inferior grade spirit stone and plodded on, step by step. The nearer they got to the stone platform, the more horrifying the pressure was for the crowd to bear. It was like a small mountain pressing on their shoulders. Each stone step was like a bottomless pit, absorbing away a significant portion of their essence the instant their feet landed. Bang! 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 A few of the martial saints from various families could not withstand the pressure and exploded. Everyone was alarmed. They trembled in fear, afraid they would be the next to die. Sages, go no further. A stone tablet stood tall in front of Ji Chengkong. There were 4 big words written on it. A boundless might emitted from the stone tablet. Ji Chengkong smiled coldly and brandished his sword. A few waves of sword chi struck the stone tablet. Cracks appeared on the stone tablet before it crumbled into countless pieces of rock. He raised his head to look at the stone platform above. He was just short of 10 steps before he would reach it. Ji Chengkong shouted lightly, and a human figure came out of his body. It stood on the stone step in front of him. Then another human figure came out of the human figure in front, arriving on a higher step. This repeated for 10 times until Ji Chengkong's figure was finally on the peak of the stone platform. Ji Chengkong took a deep breath. The 9 clones of him behind merged back into his body like illusory figures. On the peak of the stone platform, there was a wide flat-roofed building. There was a golden sage coffin in the middle of it. A faint righteous chi vented from the coffin. Ji Chengkong could not resist, revealing a slight faint smile. After all his meticulous planning and surviving the horrible odds of living, he finally made it. The golden coffin was the height of a person. Ji Chengkong took carefree steps toward it, approaching slowly. Just at this moment, a human figure appeared from the other side. Ji Chengkong was startled and retreated backward several steps. Brother Chengkong, it has been a while. Chu Chaoyun walked out from the other side of the coffin. He looked at Ji Chengkong, casually smiling. Ji Chengkong had a solemn expression. He was incredibly shocked. He did not expect to meet Chu Chaoyun here. It was very surprising. Bang! 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 Hua Yunfei, Duan Muqing, and the Gai Marquis led the remaining martial saints and arrived at the top. When they saw Chu Chaoyun, they were somewhat startled. Chu Chaoyun said indifferently, "Don't look at me like that. I just arrived too. This golden coffin has not been opened yet. After he spoke, he made an inviting gesture and took a step back. Ji Chengkong exchanged glances with Duan Muqing, Hua Yunfei, and the Gai Marquis. The three of them knew intuitively what to do. They slowly walked forward to Chu Chaoyun, blocking him and leaving him outside. Chu Chaoyun just smiled gently and ignored them. Boom. Ji Chengkong sent out a palm strike and smashed his palm on the lid of the golden coffin. A melodious chime resounded everywhere, the crowd felt their eardrums shake. A corner of the coffin lid was torn open. However, Ji Chengkong stared at his palm in amazement. Afterward, he told the people beside him, "You guys give it a try, see if you can use some essence." When the others heard it, they were stunned. They immediately tried it and found the martial spirits in their dantian seemed to be sealed. No matter how they circulated their energies, they were not able to summon their martial spirits. "What's going on?" everyone exclaimed in shock. Chu Chaoyun smiled faintly. He parted the crowd and said, "Let's take a look inside the coffin first, see what is in there." As everyone heard this, they put down the curiosity in their hearts and headed toward the coffin. After spending so much effort, everyone was curious which sage was lying in the coffin. Inside the golden coffin, an imposing male in purple robes lay peacefully. His hands had been laid on his chest grasping a sword. Ji Chengkong asked in shock, "Isn't this the last emperor of the Tianwu dynasty? Why is he here?" The Gai Marquis and the others were all shocked. Along their way here, everything indicated this to be a sage's ancient remnant. The martial technique they obtained from those black coffins could prove that. Furthermore, there were the countless carvings on the walls, they were all in the style of the ancient era. It was only after 10,000 years after the ancient era ended that the Tianwu dynasty slowly emerged. The last emperor of the Tianwu dynasty only passed away a few thousand years ago. How is he related to the sages of 20,000 years ago? Pu Si. The man wearing purple robes in the sage coffin suddenly opened his eyes. A purple glow appeared in his eyes. Before a martial saint who was looking at him could react, he burned to death. The Tianwu emperor came back to life. Is this the legendary heavenly flame? All the cultivators backed off, and their hearts were filled with horror. Although the Tianwu dynasty collapsed already, the legends surrounding it had not been forgotten. Back then, the first-generation Tianwu emperor relied on an exceptional, heaven-shaking strength to rule over the entire Tianwu continent. He established the Tianwu Empire that lasted for 10,000 years. Such an accomplishment could be called a record that has never been approached and will never be approached again. He was undisputedly the #1 person in the past and even now. Legend had it he borrowed a heavenly flame from abroad. When the heavenly flame burned at its strongest, the entire continent would melt. It was the king of flames, none could defend against it. From then on, every successive emperor had the strength of the great emperor. Even the last Tianwu emperor who lie here had the strength of the great emperor. If he truly awakened, none would be able to flee. Chu Chaoyun revealed an expression of being deep in thought. He slowly walked to the front and observed the purple-robed emperor. He said, "There is no need to worry. It is just a strand of chi reflex. Just don't look at his eyes." Everyone was deep in thought and agreed with him. There was no such thing as a person who could not die. Even the great Tianwu emperor died many years ago. Aside from the legendary martial god, no one could escape the clutches of death. Looking at the coffin again, a fire lit in everyone's eyes. Although they did not know where the body of the sage was, the value of the Tianwu emperor's body was not inferior. Just the heavenly flame contained in his body would cause people to go crazy over it. This is because the might of the heavenly flame was too great. Before the first Tianwu emperor passed away, he split the heavenly flame into 10 portions, leaving just a 10th for his descendants. Even though it was just a 10th, the might of the heavenly flame was still horrifying. Splitting the mountains, burning the land to desolated wasteland, all these were things that it could do easily. Everyone gathered in front of the sage coffin. For a moment, they did not dare take any action. Ji Chengkong stretched out his hands and slowly closed the eyelids of the emperor. Thus, the emperor in the coffin shut his eyes once more. Who? Hua Yunfei stretched out his hands and took the sword of the Tianwu emperor. He said joyfully, "Sky-splitting sword, this is a holy weapon, a complete holy weapon." Bang! The holy weapon struggled free of Hua Yunfei's hands and flew towards the Gai Marquis. Hua Yunfei's expression changed. He hurriedly stretched out his hands, intending to grab hold of it once again. However, the speed of the holy weapon was too fast. He was not able to catch it. The Gai Marquis stretched out his hand and caught hold of the holy weapon. He was filled with doubts. He did not understand why the holy weapon flew into his hands. Furthermore, he was used to using a spear, not a sword. Hua Yunfei quickly moved before the Gai Marquis and stretched out his hands, intending to snatch away the holy weapon. The Gai Marquis stared at him and asked in a cold voice, "Hua Yunfei, what are you doing?" Hua Yunfei looked at the holy weapon in the Gai Marquis's hands and said lividly, "What am I doing? Return my holy weapon to me." The Gai Marquis smiled coldly. "The holy weapon chooses its master. It is obvious you are not fit to wield this holy weapon. Stop being an annoying troublemaker here. Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit." Hua Yunfei had disliked the Gai Marquis since long ago. He kept the incident when he was blocked from killing Xiao Chen in mind. Now that he had an excuse and the Gai Marquis's golden guards were not around, he did not hesitate to make a move with his four martial saints. There was no way to use essence on the stone platform. The fight could only be fought with physical strength and techniques. Although the Gai Marquis was alone, he had been on the battlefield since he was young. His experience was much richer than these 5 people. Hua Yunfei and his group were not able to do anything to the Gai Marquis. Ji Chengkong took just a glance at the fight behind him and looked away, never looking back after that. He looked at Hua Yunfei and said indifferently, "Brother Chaoyun, if we can extract the heavenly flame, how about splitting it equally?" Chu Chaoyun smiled faintly and looked at Ji Chengkong. "Do I have any reason to refuse?" After their negotiations were complete, they started to discuss how to extract the Tianwu Emperor's heavenly flame. After a heavenly flame was absorbed, it would be hidden in every inch of the owner's skin. It would be extremely difficult to extract it, bordering on the impossible. The most direct way to extract the heavenly flame was to refine the Tianwu Emperor's corpse. After it was refined, the heavenly flame would condense and appear, never to be extinguished. However, to refine the Tianwu Emperor's body with their strength was a fool's dream. In their attempt, it may even be possible to suffer a rebound from the flame, causing them to burn till not even ashes were left. Aside from the heavenly flame, there was also the inherited martial technique of the Tianwu Empire, life-extinguishing blood-reversing swordplay. That was a precious treasure that would cause anyone's eyes to go red as well. If they were able to find it here, its value would not be any lower than the heavenly flame. Ji Chengkong searched around the golden sage coffin. However, after searching for a long time, he did not find anything. He could not help but look towards Chu Chaoyun. It was impossible that the final resting place of the Tianwu Emperor would not have the life-extinguishing blood-reversing swordplay manual. Chu Chaoyun knew what he was thinking. He said, "I arrived not much earlier than you. If I moved the coffin lid, you would have heard something." Suddenly, Duan Muqing walked to the coffin lid, which had landed on the ground. The golden coffin lid was densely covered with words from the ancient era. She quickly took out paper and brush, recording every bit of it. This was the martial technique of a sage. Although she did not know what it was likely to be extraordinary. Bang! Under everyone's shocked gazes, Xiao Chen and his group jumped onto the stone platform from the final stone step. When they arrived on the stone platform, the barrier that had been protecting them broke apart, disappearing into nothing. The fatty was the first to feel that something was wrong. "Damn it, we cannot circulate our energies or use our martial spirit here." Xiao Chen gave it a try, and it was indeed as the fatty said. The martial spirit in the Dantian region seemed to be restricted. Regardless of what he did, he was unable to elicit a response. It was also impossible for him to circulate his essence. Ji Chengkong looked at Xiao Chen with a cold glare. He leapt into the air and sent a punch at Xiao Chen without saying anything. Xiao Chen was stunned at first, but the corners of his mouth curled up in a cold smile after that. It was obvious that the people here were unable to use essence. With Xiao Chen's physical strength, he was unrivaled on this stone platform. Boom! Xiao Chen quickly welcomed him with a punch. When the 2 fists clashed, there was a crunching sound. Ji Chengkong's 5 fingers of his right hand were broken. Ji Chengkong took 5 steps back. He looked at the wound on his hand with disbelief. The fingers were linked to the heart. He felt an intense pain, and his face spasmed. TL note. The fingers were linked to the heart. This is a traditional Chinese medicine concept. Each of the fingers are linked to our internal organs and can affect them. The Gai Marquis grabbed hold of his golden long spear when he saw Xiao Chen come up. He swept the Hua clan's people aside with his spear and rushed at Xiao Chen. In the blink of an eye he arrived before Xiao Chen. Who? A series of spear stabs burst out before Xiao Chen's eyes, like a flower. The Gai Marquis was very good with the spear, even without the support of essence, so the spear stabs were still as tightly packed together as they were before. Xiao Chen took 2 steps back and the Gai Marquis followed. The long spear stuck to Xiao Chen closely, like gum. No matter how much he evaded, he was unable to completely avoid the attacks. Pooh! Xiao Chen's feet landed on empty air. He had already retreated to the edge of the stone platform. If he took another step back he would be forced off the stone platform. Considering the special characteristics of the stone platform, if Xiao Chen fell off, he would definitely die. The Gai Marquis increased his efforts to do so. He pushed his right hand forward and sent the long spear at Xiao Chen's chest violently. Pu Si. Suddenly the lunar shadow saber appeared in Xiao Chen's hands. Xiao Chen deflected the spear with a gentle move. Because the Gai Marquis had used all his strength in this strike, he ended up taking a step forward. The saber blade slid down the handle of the spear. Soon, the saber blade reached the Gai Marquis' right hand. He quickly let go, and the golden long spear dropped to the ground. Inclined body strike. Xiao Chen inclined his body and charged forward. The strength of his physical body all gathered in his right shoulder. His body, tempered by the heavenly thunder and 7-leaf flower petals, immediately exploded forth with a horrifying strength. The Gai Marquis was knocked flying with a bang. He vomited a mouthful of blood while in midair. When he fell to the ground, he kept rolling, and he almost fell off the stone platform. Attacked together, this fellow's physical body is too horrifying. Hua Yunfei shouted loudly when he saw the Gai Marquis being defeated in an instant. He could not help but feel some fear. These cultivators relied too much on essence. Although their physical bodies were tempered and were far stronger than regular people, it was incomparable to Xiao Chen's. Bang! Xiao Chen put away his saber and used his fist, as he rushed at the Ji clan cultivators in front of him. Once they were knocked to the ground, they could no longer get up, and some of their ribs were even broken. Xiao Chen shouted out loudly. He was like a wolf amongst sheep. He used a simple fist technique he had learned in the past. Its movements very simple and plain, but it was quite fierce and intense. When matched with the horrifying strength of his physical body, there were none who could defend against him. Xiao Chen looked at Hua Yunfei. Amidst the crowd, Hua Yunfei was startled, and he quickly retreated backward. Xiao Chen smiled coldly. Let's see where you can run. Xiao Chen pushed his feet on the ground and leapt into the air. He swept his right leg across horizontally and kicked Hua Yunfei's head. Pu Si. Hua Yunfei spat out bloody spit and some teeth. When he landed on the ground, he immediately fainted. Xiao Chen landed lightly on the ground. Before he landed, he had sent out a few kicks with shockingly fast speed. There were many miserable cries, and those who were stuck fell to the ground. After some time, aside from Xiao Chen's group of 3 and Chu Chaoyun, everyone laid on the ground, moaning in pain as they looked at Xiao Chen in horror. The fatty exclaimed in shock, "What a strong physical body! How did this fellow train to this extent?" Su Xiaoxiao was not too surprised. She said indifferently, "If you used 15 years of time to temper the body, you would be able to reach such a standard as well." Xiao Chen glared at Chu Chaoyun as he walked over, step by step. He was like a knife pressed to the face, killing intent radiating off him, showing off his abilities. When Chu Chaoyun saw Xiao Chen coming over, he did not panic. He took out the basketball-sized golden spirit core and threw it over to Xiao Chen. He smiled faintly. "Looks like I made a bad decision. I should not have released you into this place." Xiao Chen received the golden lion king spirit core and placed it into the universe ring. Xiao Chen gave Chu Chaoyun a deep look, but in the end, he did not make any moves against him. Even though Xiao Chen held the absolute advantage, he was still unable to see through this person. The feeling that Chu Chaoyun gave off to Xiao Chen still felt just as dangerous as before. Xiao Chen turned around and looked at the noble clan disciples lying on the ground. He walked to Hua Yunfei and removed his spatial ring. Then he put Hua Yunfei's scarlet sword into his universe ring. The spatial ring of the Tianwu continent was different from the magic treasures Xiao Chen refined. As long as those spatial rings were removed, anyone could access the things in it. Xiao Chen then walked slowly over to Ji Changkong. Ji Changkong turned ashen, as he said agitatedly, "Xiao Chen, if you dare touch me, I will make sure you live a life worse than death after you leave this place." Xiao Chen stomped on Ji Changkong's face mercilessly. "You think I will let you off? After 3 years, I will make you admit defeat willingly." After Xiao Chen took Ji Changkong's spatial ring, he ruthlessly kicked him again. A martial saint behind them could not bear to continue watching. Roaring loudly, he charged at Xiao Chen. Bang! Xiao Chen kicked him directly off of the stone platform. The instant the martial saint left the stone platform, he exploded and turned into countless chunks of meat. Everyone on the stone platform who saw it felt fear. Xiao Chen picked up the Gai Marquis's long spear and placed it in his universe ring before stripping the Gai Marquis of his spatial ring. Xiao Chen then shifted his gaze to Duan Muqing. Duan Muqing's expression turned cold. There seemed to be no emotions in her eyes. Quang Dang. She threw her spatial ring onto the stone platform and said coldly, "Some things are not meant to be yours. Even if you take them, you will end up losing them." Xiao Chen smiled coldly. "Are you talking about yourself? After seeing my spirit fox, you kept coming to me, demanding it. When I refused, you sent someone to kill me. How can there be such a shameless person in this world?" Duan Muqing's expression seemed agitated, as though she wanted to say something. However, in the end, she said nothing. Xiao Chen could not be bothered with her. He turned around and saw the fatty trying to put the coffin lid into his spatial ring. A black line appeared on his face. "This fatty is too ridiculous, he even wants the coffin lid." When the fatty saw Xiao Chen looking at him disdainfully, he chuckled, "Don't look at me like that. This coffin lid is forged from flaming blood black gold. Just a tiny piece would be worth millions of gold taels. Furthermore, a sage had carved a portion of ancient martial scriptures on it. It contains a heavenly Tao and can be used as a weapon directly. It is on par with a holy weapon. Of course, I will give you a copy of the ancient scripture." Xiao Chen felt ashamed for him in his heart. Only the fatty would dare use the coffin lid as a weapon. He called the fatty over, and they went to the middle area, where the sage coffin resided. The fatty looked at the purple-robed emperor lying peacefully in the coffin. His face was filled with doubts as he said, "The sage coffin clearly had ancient scripture carved on it. Why is there a Tianwu emperor lying in there? Where is the sage that originally laid in there?" Xiao Chen had some doubts too. They had run into countless martial sage corpses, they were all beheaded. It was clear that it was done by the same person. Had the same person done this too? However, the gap in time was too far apart. The Tianwu dynasty had already been destroyed for more than 5,000 years, but the people on the stone steps were all people from 1,000 years ago. Furthermore, they were from the same time period. Rumble. Just as Xiao Chen and the fatty were pondering on that, the small realm suddenly shook. After that, there was a loud rumble. Suddenly, the mountain above the underground palace shattered. 1,000-meter tall mountain peak crumbled. Countless stones shot out at savage forest, rocks rained down. Large rocks fell unceasingly from the sky. Some flying spirit beasts were not able to dodge in time and were smashed. They were badly mangled by the huge force the rocks carried. They all fell with miserable shrieks. Xiao Chen and the rest only felt dazzled. The scene in front of them disappeared, and the bright sun and white clouds appeared above them. A glaring sunlight shined on the stone platform. Xiao Chen was startled. He looked at the surroundings and said, "Why is the stone platform above ground now? Crap. Essence can be used now." His expression suddenly changed. The noble clan's people on the stone platform were all at least martial saints. Now that they had recovered their essence, any one of them would be able to defeat him, easily. Xiao Chen executed his gravity spell and flew into the sky, quickly rushing away into the distance. Kai! There was a phoenix cry. Duan Muqing turned into an ice phoenix. She spread her wings and chased after Xiao Chen. Ji Changkong cursed and turned into a comet. He left behind a trail of flames as he quickly chased after him. When the various noble clans people saw that they could use their essence, they all jumped off the stone platform and chased in the direction Xiao Chen had left. The small realm around the stone platform had broken, and when everyone jumped off, they did not explode, like those did earlier. Su Xiaoxiao and Jin Dabao were worried about Xiao Chen, and they chased after him as well. In the blink of an eye, only Chu Chaoyun was left standing on the stone platform. Chu Chaoyun had a calm expression on his face. When everyone left, he looked at the unconscious Hua Yunfei and kicked him off the 1,000-meter-high stone platform. Xiao Chen turned around and saw Duan Muqing and Ji Changkong chasing after him. A boundless flame started to burn in his right eye before finally becoming a purple light. A flaming cloud appeared with a "pooh" sound, burning half the sky. It blocked the two of them from proceeding. By the time the flaming clouds scattered, Xiao Chen already disappeared from view. Ji Changkong landed on the ground with a loud boom. The footprint Xiao Chen left behind on his face had yet to disappear. Behind him, the Ji clan martial saint quickly rushed over. When they saw an extremely livid Ji Changkong and his ashen complexion, they did not dare say a word. Ji Changkong said in an ice-cold voice, "Search the entire forest. I am not going back to Nanling province before we find Xiao Chen." Upon reaching the outer periphery of Savage Forest, Xiao Chen placed a Qi returning pill in his mouth. He continuously used the lightning evasion and headed to the illusion formation. After a while, he managed to get ahead of everyone else and entered the illusion formation. Xiao Chen emerged inside the illusionary formation and saw the familiar Zhuang River, as well as the rocks that stood tall along the riverbank. Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief. He pushed off the ground with his feet and jumped onto the river's surface. He circulated the azure dragon cloud soaring art and sped along the river's surface. He cut apart the gushing waterfall with a loud boom and immediately sat cross-legged on the strange rock behind the waterfall. Qi returning pill and blood replenishing pill. These kinds of rapid recovery pills all had a significant side effect. When taken for a long time, they could create a serious dependency. Today, Xiao Chen had consumed more than 10 Qi returning pill. He did not dare be careless and circulated the essence in his body. He wanted to force out the remnant medicinal energy in his body. The purple thunder divine incantation circulated in his body and the remnant medicinal energy left in the meridians were continuously being washed out. After his essence circulated for a great cycle, it returned to martial spirit. The azure dragon martial spirit absorbed all the essence. The azure dragon slowly sank into the pool of clear water. After a while, an even purer essence flowed from the martial spirit into the meridians of the body. After that, it permeated the meridians and entered Xiao Chen's flesh and bone. The purple thunder divine incantation circulated repeatedly like this for 81 great cycles. A black sticky substance slowly flowed out of Xiao Chen's pores. The remnant medicinal energy left in his body for a long time was all forced out. After the medicinal strength was forced out, Xiao Chen felt very weak. Furthermore, the black sticky substance felt very uncomfortable on his skin. Xiao Chen quickly jumped out of the waterfall and landed in the gushing Zhuang River with a putong sound. The sticky black substance on his body was immediately washed away by the river water. Xiao Chen burst through the river's surface and took a deep breath, feeling refreshed. Although he still felt very weak, his spirit was revitalized, his mind, qi, and spirit were all at their peaks. Bang! Xiao Chen leapt out of the water like a flood dragon. There was a large splash as he landed firmly on the riverbank. Xiao Chen took out a set of dry clothes from the universe ring and changed into them. Xiao Chen did not do anything else. He went and found a comfortable place, laid down, and started to take a nap. Early in the morning the next day, the sun rose from the east, melodious bird chirps covered the forest. These sounds woke the reluctant Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen stood up slowly and stretched. He felt very comfortable, his physical and mental states recovered to their peaks. Xiao Chen smiled faintly as he took out all the spatial rings of the noble clan disciples from his universe ring. Although he did not receive the sage's inheritance or the heavenly flame of the Tianwu Emperor, his harvest was great. First, he poured everything from Duanmu Qing's spatial ring on the ground. Immediately, a large pile of spirit stones, battle armor, and medicinal pills fell on the ground. Xiao Chen carefully inspected and counted them. There were more than 100 inferior-grade spirit stones, 20 medial-grade spirit stones, 2 pieces of Earth-ranked battle armor, 2 Earth-ranked spirit weapons, 10 odd bottles of medicinal pills above rank 4, and finally an ancient martial technique manual. Looks like the family property the martial sages carried on them were distributed amongst them. Otherwise, it would not be possible for mere successors of noble clans to carry so much treasure, Xiao Chen said softly. Xiao Chen did not hesitate and emptied out the spatial rings of the other noble clan disciples. The ground was completely filled with spirit stones and spirit weapons. I could be said to be rich now. With so many spirit stones, spirit weapons, and medicinal pills, I have enough to cultivate all the way to martial saint. Xiao Chen was wild with joy. The gains of all the noble clans in the underground palace were now his. The value of all these things when added together was equivalent to half the wealth of a noble clan. To anyone, it would be an immense amount of wealth. Xiao Chen tidied them up and counted them again. In total, he gained 200 inferior-grade spirit stones, 80 medial-grade spirit stone, 5 Earth-ranked spirit weapons, 3 pieces of superior-grade Earth-ranked battle armor, 6 ancient martial technique manuals, and countless medicinal pills. Dong. Xiao Chen pushed aside a pile of spirit stones, and a small, exquisite silver warship appeared in front of Xiao Chen. Damn. Someone actually managed to find an ancient era secret treasure in the underground palace. Xiao Chen exclaimed in shock as he held the small silver warship in his hand. Xiao Chen sent his spiritual sense into the silver warship. Instantly, it felt as though he walked in a huge realm. However, this realm was extremely damaged. There were missing pieces everywhere, the formation markings in the inner part were not completed. It was very badly damaged. All these caused the silver warship to lack spiritual energy. If a regular person discovered this, he would not realize this was a secret treasure. Xiao Chen withdrew his spiritual sense and looked at the silver warship in his hand. He felt it was unfortunate. After all, it had been tens of thousands of years. It was impossible to avoid the deterioration of the secret weapon. Furthermore, the offensive formations in it were completely damaged. There was no possibility of repairing it. Even if it could be repaired, it could only be used as a transportation tool. However, Xiao Chen still decided to repair it. With his current strength, it would be impossible for him to refine such a secret treasure. Not to even mention his cultivation realm, just seeking the materials would take countless years. Now that there was an almost complete secret treasure in front of him, it would be unbecoming of him not to use it. As for the attacking formations on it, he could recarve them as he got stronger. The most important thing was this was a secret treasure refined by a sage. The sage had left a lasting mark on it. After tens of thousands of years, it had already been deeply rooted in the inside the warship. From what I can tell, the secret treasures refined by the ancient sages are definitely the magic treasures recorded in the Compendium of Cultivation. Xiao Chen muttered to himself, is the Compendium of Cultivation related to this world? He shook his head and recollected his thoughts. Now was not the time to think about this problem. Xiao Chen placed the spirit stones and battle armor on the ground into the universe ring. He executed the gravity spell and soared into the sky. He headed to the mountainside. The waterfall flowed down. The wind whistled loudly on the mountainside. Xiao Chen stood on the old tree growing on the mountainside in a zigzag manner. Xiao Chen looked into the distance and saw an even higher mountain peak. There were clouds around that mountain peak. It looked hazy and mysterious. It is there. Xiao Chen asked softly and continued to fly up. A biting cold wind blew at him. Xiao Chen's clothes and hair fluttered in the wind. The further up he went, the fiercer the wind became. It even became so strong, he could not open his eyes. After a long time, Xiao Chen landed on the mountain peak with a "hoo" sound. If he stretched his hands out, he would be able to touch the white clouds. The spiritual energy in the surroundings was very dense, giving one a faint sense of their spiritual energy being saturated. Xiao Chen found an empty spot and took out the inferior grade spirit stones from the universe ring one by one. He was getting ready to assemble an inferior-grade spirit-gathering formation to reconverge the spiritual nature of the silver warship. Actually, this spirit-gathering formation would be more effective if Xiao Chen used medial-grade spirit stones. However, Xiao Chen could not bear to use the few medial-grade spirit stones. One medial-grade spirit stone was the equivalent to 100 inferior-grade spirit stone. However, there was no one silly enough to make such an exchange. This was because medial-grade spirit stones were too rare in the Great Qin nation. After a while, an inferior-grade spirit-gathering formation appeared. Xiao Chen placed the silver warship into the center of the formation and then slowly sent essence into it. The formation markings lit up with a faint glow, slowly extending out. The surrounding dense spiritual energy poured madly into it. Within the formation, the spiritual energy became like mist. After a while, it actually condensed into drops of liquid spiritual energy. Pu Si. In the middle of the formation, a resplendent pillar of light suddenly lit up and rose into the sky. The small and exquisite silver warship flew up within the light pillar. The body of the warship flickered with two different kinds of light. Xiao Chen extended his spiritual sense into it. The formation marking carved on the silver warship were circulated rapidly, absorbing the horrifying spiritual energy contained in the light pillar. After half an hour, the spirit stones on the ground started to crack rapidly. Xiao Chen exclaimed, "Oh no! The amount of spiritual energy needed by the silver warship is too horrifying. The inferior-grade spirit-gathering formation is not sufficient to satisfy it. This fellow's appetite is too big," Xiao Chen thought bitterly in his heart. The spiritual energy provided by more than 100 spirit stones was not even sufficient to maintain it for 2 hours. This was completely out of his expectation. Xiao Chen took out the Golden Lion King spirit core from the universe ring. He looked hesitatingly at the silver warship in the sky, feeling slightly unwilling. The golden spirit core contained the spiritual energy absorbed by the Golden Lion King for hundreds of years. It was incomparably pure. Cultivators who cultivated any attributes could directly absorb it. Once it was placed in the spirit-gathering formation, it could instantly raise the grade of the spirit-gathering formation to medial grade. However, Xiao Chen felt reluctant to do so. He intended to leave this for when he was breaking through to Martial King. Martial King realm was a big hurdle, and once he passed it, he would stand at the peak of everyone. If he failed to do so, then he could only fade away with time. In the end, he put it away and took out the medial grade spirit stones. The value of the medial grade spirit stones was not inferior to the spirit core. Furthermore, they were very useful. They could be accepted as money in any place. As Xiao Chen placed them in the formation, his heart bled. Xiao Chen placed 40 medial grade spirit stones before the medial grade spirit gathering formation was completed. That was half of Xiao Chen's gains. Xiao Chen made a hand seal, and a strong wind blew. All the spiritual energy within 1,000 meters surged over endlessly. Ti-da, ti-da. The droplets of spiritual energy fell on the mountain peak like rain. This was the essence of spiritual energy. Xiao Chen did not want to waste it. He took out a spatial magic treasure, the jade bottle, and placed it to the side, collecting all the droplets from the sky. The pillar of light in the center became even more resplendent. The silver warship started to give off a boundless radiance. Xiao Chen could clearly feel the dows of the sage on the warship slowly recovering. Hu! A horrifying holy might burst out. The silver warship rapidly rose up. In the blink of an eye, it rose by 1,000 meters, becoming a black dot in Xiao Chen's vision. Xiao Chen was startled and quickly flew up. The gravity spell was not a true flight martial technique. The higher Xiao Chen flew, the stronger the gravity he would experience, the amount of essence exhausted would increase as well. Xiao Chen flew higher and higher in the sky. He could see endless layers of clouds billowing, gathering around the pillar of light in the middle of the formation. It felt like he would arrive at the horizon after if pierced through these endless layers of clouds. The essence in his body was rapidly exhausted. Xiao Chen frowned. He could only still see the vague figure of the silver warship. He did not know how high it would fly. Xiao Chen clenched his teeth and took out a medial-grade spirit stone, holding it in his hand. A horrifying amount of essence immediately flowed into Xiao Chen's meridians. The dense essence instantly saturated his meridians. A bloated sensation filled up every bit of Xiao Chen's skin and muscle. He felt like he was about to explode. They were filled with an endless and boundless energy. Boom! Xiao Chen shouted, and his ascending speed suddenly increased multiple times. This body caused a shockwave in the air. In the blink of an eye, he caught up to the silver warship. Rumble. The silver warship hovered at the peak of the pillar of light. With a loud sound, it instantly enlarged. There were banners with the word Yan, Yan, on the bow of the ship, fluttering in the wind. TL notes. The Ra says multiple 33 meters long, and 6.6 meters wide. This feels odd to put in, hence I decided to leave it out. The unit of measurement here is zhong. 1 zhong is 3.3 meters. So it is tens of zongs long and 2 zongs wide. Dark clouds surrounded the warship, thunder rumbled unceasingly, and endless bolts of lightning circled it. It can actually repair itself. How in the world did the ancient sages refine this? Xiao Chen was shocked when he saw lightning bolts surround the silver warship. Xiao Chen was planning to repair the damaged formation markings himself. He did not expect the silver warship to repair itself after it regained its spirituality. Xiao Chen suddenly thought of something. If it can repair itself like this, as the secret treasure of a sage, it would have the mark of a sage. Now that the sages are all gone, it would automatically search for a person with the bloodline of a sage and recognize it as its master automatically. I have to erase the mark of the sage and brand it with my own mark. Xiao Chen spoke to himself slowly, word by word. His eyes revealed a determined look. He went past the boundless dark clouds and the endless flickering lightning bolts. Xiao Chen landed firmly on the bow of the warship. He cautiously looked at the Yan word on the banners at the bow of the ship. The big black flag seemed to have descended from the ancient times. It stood silently at the bow, fluttering in the wind. The Yan word on the flag was written in the cursive style of calligraphy. Every stroke seemed to contain a dominant force, revealing a strong power and looking very imposing. Xiao Chen's eyes lit up like a torch. He stared at the Yan word. He knew what he had to do. He had to fight against the sage, erasing the spiritual mark of the sage personally. The danger involved was obvious. There was a high chance of death. However, Xiao Chen's gaze was as resolute as ever. He had no intention to retreat. He stabbed his spiritual sense into the banner like a sharp sword. Boom! In that instant, the surrounding scenery vanished. Xiao Chen appeared on a patch of dense magma. Occasionally, there were streams of flame spurting out. In the distance, there was an erupting volcano, releasing a relentless amount of surging fire and lava. Strangely, there were 9 suns in the sky. A huge deity stood in the sky. A glow, tens of thousands meters wide, was radiating behind him. His boundless might spread throughout this space. Fu Si. That deity suddenly opened his eyes and fired a golden light, enveloping Xiao Chen. He shouted, "How dare you show disrespect before a deity? Why are you still not kneeling?" This voice was like the thunder of the 9 heavens. It was very shocking. It reverberated unceasingly in the space. It was ear-splitting, creating fear in oneself. Finally, this voice became an echo, repeating at the same frequency as Xiao Chen's heartbeat. The echoes repeated faster and faster. Xiao Chen's heartbeat corresponded, thumping at the same pace like it was about to leap out of his chest. Bang! 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 Xiao Chen held his hand over his chest. He could feel an enormous pressure. He felt incredibly stifled. He felt pained and confused. His handsome face twisted and distorted. With a putong sound, his right leg could not help but kneel. Still not kneeling. The voice continued to reverberate in Xiao Chen's ear, as though it was imprinting on Xiao Chen's mind. It seemed impossible to get rid of. The vast and mighty divine voice, above the highest of heavens, was a voice like thunder, each word a gem, like a saber or a sword, sharp without restraint. Mortals were like ants. How can they not fear? TL note. This bit feels like a poem. Every phrase comes in 4 Chinese words. The might of the ancient sage was so terrifying. Even though tens of thousands of years had passed, his mark still had such a terrifying might. It completely dominated this mental space. This was a fight that transcended tens of thousands of years. Unless Xiao Chen's spiritual sense could surpass this, he had no way of winning. The moment his other knee fell to the ground, his spiritual mark will vanish forever, his body would become soulless. Xiao Chen did his best to persevere, to preserve a stand of clarity in his mind. Is there anything that can break the might of this deity? Have I seen anything that would be able to trample the deity under its feet? The ancient sages have seen deities, thus he recreated a deity in this space. However, the strongest cultivator Xiao Chen had seen before was Yu Ying. How was she going to fight against a deity? In Xiao Chen's opinion, even the Thunder Emperor or the Tianwu Emperor would find it hard to be victorious against a deity. The might of the ancient sages was definitely stronger than them, there was no doubt about that. If even the sages could not defeat it, then what could? The deities the sages imagined were the legendary gods, their existence was more horrifying than the sages or the ancient emperors. A figure suddenly appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. Suddenly, Xiao Chen remembered the man he saw in the Sage Dao comprehension picture. The mysterious man who was fighting against 18 azure dragons. Boom! Xiao Chen shouted and suddenly, 18 azure dragons appeared behind him. The dragons roared out ceaselessly, instantly breaking apart the divine voice that reverberated in this realm. The deity in the sky roared angrily, the glow behind him flickering repeatedly. He shouted, "Ant, do you know you have committed a huge sin?" Xiao Chen shut his eyes, and his mind cleared. The corners of his mouth curled up in a cold smile. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes, and two beams of purple light shot out, clashing fearlessly against the golden glow of the deity. The so-called gods were just a figment of mortals' imagination. They were born as a result of the people's beliefs. If I believe in gods, then the gods are powerful and mighty, limitless and absolute. If I do not believe in gods, then everything exists in me. I am myself, and the gods cannot interfere. Xiao Chen looked at the deity in the sky and slowly said, "I should thank you. If it were not for you, this obsession in my heart would never have extinguished." The road of cultivation was slow and long. The further one walks, the higher the requirement was on one's mental state. The so-called talent was no longer significant. There were many people in the ancient era who had ordinary talents, who became sages. What they relied on were a determined heart and a pure mental state. Regardless of the world, it was normal for people to attribute things they could not explain to gods. However, do gods actually exist? No one knows. Even if they did, it would not be the same as the one most people believed in. Xiao Chen now managed to get rid of such a thought in his heart. This would be a great opportunity for Xiao Chen as he trained his heart in future. In the end, this deity was just a mark left behind by the sages. As long as Xiao Chen was enlightened about this, there was no reason for Xiao Chen to lose this battle that transcended tens of thousands of years. Just after Xiao Chen spoke, the light behind the deity slowly dimmed. The huge glow started to vanish, eventually becoming non-existent. Rumble. A limitless sea appeared behind Xiao Chen. The waves roared, and layers upon layers of waves surged violently. A dragon's roar was heard, and an azure dragon leapt out of the sea. Standing on the dragon's head was a man holding a saber. The moment he appeared, the 18 azure dragons around Xiao Chen immediately flew behind him. The roars of the dragons continuously resounded everywhere. A crack actually appeared on the boundaries of this space, spreading out slowly. The man who stood on the dragon head looked at the deity in the sky and revealed a disdainful smile. He pushed off with his feet, and his body vanished from its original spot. Fu Si. The saber flashed, and the deity was decapitated. His speed was extremely fast. Xiao Chen did not even manage to see his shadow. It was not possible to follow his movements with his eyes. The space suddenly broke apart, and the scene changed again. The volcano disappeared, and a large black banner appeared in the middle of a desolate land. Xiao Chen seemed to have descended from the sky, slowly landing on the ground. He walked over to the black banner, and he saw a hazy Yan word on the banner. Xiao Chen did not hesitate as he walked over and picked up the black banner. Immediately, the clouds surged, and a strong wind blew, blowing sand and stone around. Who? Xiao Chen opened his mouth and swallowed the black banner. He intended to swallow the Taoes contained in the banner. The space immediately became silent. Xiao Chen sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, carefully comprehending the laws of heaven and earth, enlightened about the Taoes the sages left behind in the banner. His surroundings changed continuously. For a while, the flames of war enveloped him. Blood scattered throughout an ancient battlefield. There were sages falling and great demons dying. Then, for a while, it became a snowy night. Flower petals filled the sky under a full moon. It was a beautiful setting and extremely touching. Then, it became a sage comprehending the Tao. There were mysterious phenomena occurring on a mountain peak. Endless thunder roared out. The sage was comprehending the great Tao amidst the roars of thunder, developing his own laws. Finally, all these vanished, leaving behind a boundless gray. A human figure stood in the sky, looking into the distance. There was an indescribable loneliness in his eyes. This was the life of a sage. He had once gone wild as a youth, experiencing love, regret, passion, and hate, turning the mortal world upside down. He had once been unrivaled, wandering through heaven and earth, plucking stars and pulling the moon. There was nothing he could not do. However, in the end, he was still left with an immeasurable loneliness. There was no one who could understand his pain. He released a long sigh. The path of a sage was lonely, and the world of mortals was empty. Xiao Chen suddenly opened his eyes. Chaos appeared in his gaze. He saw the life of an ancient sage. It felt like 10,000 years had passed, yet it only took an instant, like it was a dream. Amidst the chaos, a black banner appeared in Xiao Chen's eyes. After that, it materialized in the illusionary space. Xiao Chen shouted and flew into the air. He grasped the banner's pole and stabbed it into the ground fiercely. There was a powerful resounding Xiao word on the black banner. The mark this sage left behind had finally been assimilated by Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen opened his eyes again, and the surrounding scenery changed. He was standing on the bow of the silver warship. He finally returned to the real world. The black banner on the bow of the warship fluttered in the wind. The Yan word disappeared and turned into a Xiao word. This secret treasure finally bore Xiao Chen's mark. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and sent out his spiritual sense. He started to inspect the formation markings in the secret treasure. After a long time, he withdrew his spiritual sense, feeling a little disappointed. The offensive formations did not take a turn for the better. There were no signs of it being repaired. It seemed like Xiao Chen could not wait till his cultivation realm improves and recarve it. However, the other functions of the secret treasure had already recovered. There was no difference from when it was at its peak. At least regarding speed and defense, it should not disappoint Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. He jumped down from the bow of the warship. The secret treasure still had to be tempered by thunder for 49 days before it would be able to display the Taos of heaven and earth. In the short term, Xiao Chen did not have any matters that would require it. There was a special feeling about having the body tens of thousands of meters in the sky. Xiao Chen felt this special feeling as he fell rapidly toward the ground. Dark clouds which extended forever into the distance appeared below Xiao Chen. He extended his spiritual sense to inspect it and saw countless drops of rain falling from the clouds. When the clouds touched each other, there would be a crash of thunder and lightning streaking through the sky. Xiao Chen sighed. After being in heaven, I nearly forgot about the matters of the mortal world. The medial-grade spirit stone in his hand was not empty yet. Xiao Chen covered himself essence and pierced through the clouds. The rain that fell on him was pushed away by the essence, flowing away from his body. Suddenly, Xiao Chen was inspired. He used the Battle Sage Origins changing character formula to replicate Ji Chengkong's martial technique. His body turned into a meteor and headed to the ground violently. Boom! The meteor broke through the ceaseless curtain of rain and landed on the ground instantly. There was a loud explosion, and Xiao Chen emerged. The shockwave caused countless drops of rain to evaporate immediately. Xiao Chen looked at the medial-grade spirit stone that completely lost its light. He felt some astonishment. He muttered to himself, martial techniques that require an inherited martial spirit would exhaust large amounts of essence when using the changing character formula to replicate it. I have to remember this in future. Xiao Chen threw away the completely exhausted medial-grade spirit stone and increased his pace. He walked rapidly on the Zhuang River before going through the gushing waterfall, entering the cave. Xiao Chen took out the ancient martial techniques from the universe ring and started to slowly read them. The so-called ancient texts were actually China's traditional Chinese characters. It was not difficult for Xiao Chen to read them. He just saw the life of an ancient sage and gained some enlightenment. This enlightenment created a very profound state of mind. Xiao Chen felt his mind become much clearer. Many problems he could not solve in the past were instantly dealt with. Xiao Chen did not know how long he could maintain such a state. Thus, he quickly took out the ancient martial techniques and looked through them carefully, hoping he would be able to comprehend them. The ancient martial techniques were very different from the modern martial techniques. The biggest difference was the ancient martial techniques were not divided into the yellow, profound, earth, and heaven ranks. Xiao Chen looked through every book carefully. He did not seek a perfect understanding, what he could comprehend was sufficient. Any part he did not understand, he would skip as it was not worth trying at this point. Xiao Chen reviewed the 5 ancient martial techniques in such a manner for half a month, until the state of enlightenment vanished. Walala. The waterfall in front of the cave continued to gush down. Past the waterfall, the rain had still not stopped, falling unceasingly. This rain was a result of the silver warship. Because it had to be tempered by thunder for a period, the rain never stopped. Xiao Chen got up and walked through the gushing waterfall. The rain fell on him as he landed on the rushing Zheng River. The surface of the river was surging, it had flooded the riverbanks long ago. The river was more rapid than it ever had been. Xiao Chen currently achieved small success in the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art. Relying on this heaven-ranked movement technique, he stood firmly on the gushing river without panicking. Xiao Chen closed his eyes and pondered upon the gains of the past half-month as the rain drenched him. His mind cleared, and he entered a miraculous state. The ancient martial techniques enlightened Xiao Chen. Some of these martial techniques were sword techniques, some were spear techniques, some were purely cultivation techniques. However, Xiao Chen did not intend to learn any of these. These martial techniques were not the peak ancient martial techniques. It was better not to bite off more than one could chew. If he relearned a cultivation technique, the gains were not going to make up for the losses. When different martial techniques were mixed, they might end up restraining each other. Xiao Chen intended to continue comprehending the rushing thunder saber technique. He merged everything he learned in the past half-month, the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art, and the Battle Sage Origins changing character formula together to allow the rushing thunder saber technique to undergo a qualitative improvement. The difficulties involved was no less than creating a new martial technique from scratch. With the rushing thunder saber technique as the core, adding in what he learned in the past and his recent comprehensions, the rushing thunder saber technique was improved further. Xiao Chen stood on the Zheng River for half a month. It was as though he could feel the pulse of the Zhuang River. He seemed to have become one with the endlessly gushing river. Fu Si. On this day, Xiao Chen finally opened his eyes. There was a calm within his black eyes, absent of any waves of emotion. With just a thought, the lunar shadow saber came out of the universe ring and appeared in his right hand. Drawing the saber, Xiao Chen shifted his stance and held the saber tightly in his right hand. There was no glow coming from the saber blade. With a shua sound, the saber flashed in the rain. It made its way between the space of every raindrop. It lasted just an instant, its speed was at its peak. It did not come into contact with any raindrops at all. Boom. A streak of lightning appeared in the sky and crashed into the river surface, creating a 2-meter tall splash. The electrical current flowed through the water and entered Xiao Chen's body. Xiao Chen's expression did not change. The electrical current flowed through his skin, crackling as it did so. It looked as though he was being electrocuted, but he was not injured at all. When the electrical current finally gathered on the black saber blade of the lunar shadow saber, Xiao Chen stepped forward and took advantage of the electrical current to strike out with his saber rapidly. Arclight Chop. A 2-meter tall purple arclight gleaming with an electrical light blasted out in the rain. The raindrops instantly became steam. A fog spread out, and vision was obscured by half. There was a void of rain for a short period. Boom. There was another crack of thunder, and the waves surged to the sky. Xiao Chen soared into the air, propelled up by an intense splash. Xiao Chen had combined the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art with the rushing heaven chop. He moved as fast as a flood dragon. Everywhere he passed, the rain would disappear like it had run dry. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Chen rose by hundreds of meters. With the assistance of the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring art, his body turned midair and actually stopped temporarily. Without the assistance of the gravity spell, this was almost impossible. The activation of the gravity spell was too long, there was no value in a fight. Thus, Xiao Chen only used it as a means of escape. Pooh! In the instant he stopped, Xiao Chen's aura raised to its peak. Under the pressure of the aura, the falling rain seemed to slow incredibly. Boom! 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 Rushing thunder chop. Xiao Chen shouted lightly, thunder crackling behind him. His aura was extremely frightening, like a thunder god descending to the mortal realm. Bang! Borrowing the might of the rushing thunder, Xiao Chen slammed his saber onto the river surface. This huge force cut through the water like tofu, splitting the river in half. 3-meter-tall walls made of water rose up on both sides where the cut was made. Xiao Chen landed on the water, and the water walls on both sides rapidly merged back together. These water walls seemed very soft and gentle, but they actually contained 500 kilograms of force. It could easily crush a cultivator into pulp. Rushing thunder second chain chop. Riding on the accumulated strength from the earlier 4 strikes, Xiao Chen quickly executed a rushing thunder second chain chop. There was no clear target for this strike, it only stuck out against empty air. Hu Kai. A centrifugal force appeared in the air, sucking in the merging water walls, turning it into a water sprout that spun up on the riverbank. The water sprout circulated for a long time, sucking in all the surrounding river water. After a short moment, a huge pillar of water raised into the sky. Xiao Chen stood on the riverbank and watched the water pillar rushing to the sky. He did not seem satisfied with it. He had spent 1 month using that state of enlightenment to peruse the ancient martial technique. Although the rushing thunder chop evolved to an even more horrifying level, it was still far from what he hoped for. It fell short by a significant amount. All the martial techniques he learned had not been merged completely. In the past month, the more he thought about it, the more he felt the potential of the rushing thunder saber technique was unlimited. It was not like a profound ranked martial technique. He was still unable to completely understand the principles contained within it. He was also not able to execute the rushing thunder third chain chop. It felt like he was still missing something. Xiao Chen smiled bitterly as he sighed softly. It seems that it would be too difficult to fully grasp the rushing thunder saber technique with my cultivation as a superior grade martial master. After resting for a while, Xiao Chen stared into the distance, his gaze pierced through the rain and fog. He looked at the medial grade spirit gathering formation on the mountain peak high above the clouds. Then, he executed the gravity spell and flew in that direction. After a long time and piercing through endless layers of clouds, Xiao Chen arrived at the mountain peak once again. It was raining here as well, but the rain was made out of spiritual energy that liquefied. In the center of the spirit gathering formation, the pillar of golden light was still as resplendent as ever. The spirit spring on the warship had been repaired long ago. It no longer required the assistance of spiritual energy to undergo its baptism of thunder. Xiao Chen collected the bottle collecting spiritual energy and put it away into the universe ring. Then, he entered the spirit gathering formation and sat down cross-legged, entering a state of cultivation. He did not wish to let the gathered spiritual energy go to waste. All the droplets condensed from spiritual energy in the sky instantly gathered to Xiao Chen. The boundless spiritual energy poured into him. The spiritual energy gushed in Xiao Chen's meridians. The speed of cultivating in this spirit gathering formation was much faster than cultivating in the cave behind the waterfall. Xiao Chen ate another fasting pill and started to circulate the purple thunder divine incantation over and over again. The days of cultivation were incredibly lonely. The sun rose and set, clouds gathered and scattered. Xiao Chen was like a statue, unmoving. After half a month, the formation markings slowly started to crack. The 10 medial grade spirit stones all turned into dust. Boom! Xiao Chen opened his eyes and fired a purple beam of light. After cultivating bitterly and attaining comprehensions for more than a month, plus the cultivation he did in the spirit gathering formation, he finally reached the peak of superior grade martial master. There was a faint smile on Xiao Chen's face. He finally revealed an expression of satisfaction. However, when he remembered how Ji Changkong had become a martial saint long ago, and the noble clan successors with inherited martial spirits who were at the peak of martial grand masters, he could not help but feel dispirited. If only he were like those people, awakening their martial spirit at birth. Then he would not have to waste 15 years of his time. With his talent, his cultivation speed would not be slower than them. Boom. A huge silver warship slowly landed on the mountain peak. After being tempered by thunder for 49 days, this ancient secret treasure had recovered to its former glory. However, this huge warship looked very high-key. With a thought from Xiao Chen, the banner on the bow flew into Xiao Chen's eye and the warship rapidly shrank. After a short moment, a small silver boat appeared. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and jumped onto the small boat. He looked at the distant white water city and said softly, "It is time to return." The formations activated, and the silver boat flew into the sky. It was swift as the wind and quick as lightning, significantly faster than Xiao Chen's gravity spell by many times. The wind roared in Xiao Chen's ears. Xiao Chen stood at the bow with his hands behind his back, his clothes and hair were fluttering in the wind. His handsome face revealed a certain calmness, there was the indistinct feeling of an immortal. Xiao Chen felt very excited, he had never flown so fast and so smoothly before. Every cell in his body was relaxed. Finally, Xiao Chen reduced his speed and raised the altitude of the boat, avoiding all the flying spirit beasts. He sat at the bow and took out a bottle of wine, as well as some snacks, from the universal ring. He enjoyed the wine and food by himself. The rain, which fell for about a month, had stopped. The sun, which came after the rain, brought warmth. Xiao Chen enjoyed the pleasant wind as he drank his wine and ate his snacks. He revealed a satisfied smile as he looked at the scenery around him. At this moment, he finally experienced what it was to be an immortal, wandering around the world as he drank wine, watching clouds gather and scatter, flowers bloom and wilt, looking over the whole country every day and night, feeling free and unfettered. Xiao Chen sat on the bow of the boat, traveling high in the sky. Just as he was about to leave Savage Forest, Xiao Chen's spiritual sense picked up a black warship below him. Xiao Chen was mildly astonished in his heart. He quickly increased the altitude of the boat and carefully inspected his surroundings. After a short moment, the Duanmu clan's profound ice palace, the Gai Marquis' golden battleship, and the Hua clan's black royal warship all appeared. Xiao Chen revealed a faint smile, these people are really patient. It has already been more than a month, and they still have not left. Hu Kai. The silver warship suddenly increased its speed. Xiao Chen moved from the bow to the hold of the warship. He operated the formation of the secret treasure with all his might. The ancient secret treasure instantly demonstrated a horrifying speed. It turned into a flash of silver light and headed to Whitewater City at a great speed. When it was about 1,000 meters from Whitewater City, Xiao Chen stopped the silver warship in the sky. He was not in a hurry to go down. He could imagine the situation within the city without having to spend too much time thinking about it. Wanted posters of him must have been posted everywhere. The bounty the various noble clans set on him would, without a doubt, surpass what the Zhang clan could do. Xiao Chen remembered the Compendium of Cultivation had a shape-shifting spell. When trained to great perfection, he would be able to turn into numerous objects. Tall mountains or flowing rivers, flying beasts or creatures of the land, or even the sun, moon, or stars. Xiao Chen thought it would be useful in his current situation. Xiao Chen did not expect to be able to achieve that kind of legendary stage, all he needed was to be able to change his appearance slightly. Soon, the sun set in the west, it was now dusk. Xiao Chen had already trained the shape-shifting spell to the initial stage. However, he was still not familiar with it, he was not able to change his height or body shape. Since Xiao Chen's Purple Thunder Divine Incantation had already reached the third layer, he could practice many of the minor spells on the Compendium of Cultivation. However, he had no time to research them. This resulted in a situation where Xiao Chen had to learn on the spot when he needed to use the shape-shifting spell. The full moon hung high in the sky, surrounded by countless stars. It was now night. Xiao Chen transformed into a dark-skinned, middle-aged man. He was about to make use of the cover of night to sneak into Whitewater City. Dong! Dong! Just at this moment, the spirit blood jade at Xiao Chen's chest suddenly moved. Xiao Chen felt delighted. After a moment, Xiao Bai jumped out of the spirit blood jade. After being in a deep slumber for so long, The moment Xiao Bai came out, it immediately leapt into Xiao Chen's embrace. Seeing the dark-skinned Xiao Chen, it did not understand what was going on. It looked at Xiao Chen with huge eyes filled with distrust. Xiao Chen smiled joyfully and recovered his usual looks. Xiao Chen immediately became intimate. Xiao Chen smiled, "I'm currently being chased by bad people and can't reveal my true appearance. You should hide in the spirit blood jade first. I will treat you to some fish porridge later." Xiao Bai nodded in a lovable fashion. It held its paws up as though it was holding a huge bowl. It meant it wanted to eat a bowl of fish porridge that huge. It was extremely cute. Xiao Chen could not help but laugh. Xiao Chen extended his spiritual sense and found an area void of people. He then rapidly descended from the sky, turning back into the dark-skinned, middle-aged man from earlier. He now looked completely different from before. He headed towards the city gates with a strut. There were 6 wanted posters of Xiao Chen on the city wall. Under each wanted poster, there was a list of huge rewards. Aside from money, each noble clan also offered a spirit weapon and a high-ranked martial technique. What caused Xiao Chen some surprise was the wanted poster from the Zaihe province's Yan clan. He could not help but shake his head. When the noble clans make their move, they really do so in such an incomparably tyrannical fashion. Dongming Province, Zaihe Province, Nanling Province, and the Royal Court, I'm wanted in the 4 provinces of the Great Qin Nation. It seems like there is no place for me anymore. Xiao Chen entered Whitewater City and headed straight for Liushang Pavilion. As it just recently became dark, Liushang Pavilion's business was booming. When Xiao Chen went in, the first floor was already full. He could not see any empty seats. Xiao Chen headed directly for the second floor. The second floor was full of cultivators. They were currently discussing the events of the past month. It's been more than a month. The noble clans have almost flipped the entire savage forest upside down. However, they still have not found Xiao Chen. I have lived for so long, and this is the first time I saw someone who dared to offend so many noble clans in front of everyone. Even Mu Chengshe of the Frigid Night Palace did not have publicity as big as Xiao Chen. I don't understand something. How did Xiao Chen offend so many noble clans at the same time? Haha, Xiao Chen had already offended the 3 noble clans over the ancient remnant map. I hear from the people that managed to escape from the ancient remnant that after they entered the ancient remnant, Xiao Chen robbed the 4 noble clans, not even letting the Gai Marquis go. Is that fellow carrying a lot of treasures on him now? If I captured him, would I be rich? There is no need to capture him. As long as you have news about him and report it to the noble clans, you will be able to obtain thousands of gold taels. Xiao Chen continued and headed to the 3rd floor. The discussions of the cultivators on the 2nd floor were loud. All these discussions reached Xiao Chen's ears. He was astonished by this. He did not expect after so long, he would still be the main topic of discussions and rumors. Xiao Chen flashed his VIP card and entered the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor was much quieter. Most people were bargaining prices in a low voice. Xiao Chen took a look around and saw many people making transactions on treasures obtained from the ancient remnants. Although many cultivators died in the ancient remnant, there were some lucky or strong cultivators who managed to find something good. Just as Xiao Chen was about to take a seat, he saw a cultivator selling a small and exquisite copper bell. That copper bell seemed very ancient. Unfortunately, its surface was badly damaged. Xiao Chen extended his spiritual sense over and touched the copper bell. Suddenly, a high-pitched sound rang in his head. His mind was shaken. He almost fainted. Xiao Chen was extremely astonished, and he quickly withdrew his spiritual sense. Hey! I risked my life and found this in a coffin inside the ancient remnant. It is definitely a secret treasure. Are you only willing to offer 1,000 silver taels? That is ridiculous. The owner of the copper bell was a martial grand master in gray robes. At this moment, he had a very agitated expression. His right arm was missing from the elbow down. After he heard the offer from the other party, his complexion became ashen, and his expression turned to one of rage. After this trip to the ancient remnant, his arm was chopped off at the elbow, and he became a cripple. Originally, he thought he would be able to sell this copper bell for a good price. Who knew it would only be worth 1,000 silver taels? Seated across the gray-clothed martial grand master was a merchant. The expression on that merchant was one of extreme impatience. He said, in a bad mood, there are differences in quality of secret treasures. This copper bell of yours is clearly broken and can no longer be used. How can it be worth a high price? If it were not for the fact that it is an antique and might be worth something to collectors, I would not even be bothered to offer 1,000 silver taels. If you are willing, then sell it, don't waste my time. You are ruthless. The cultivator, missing half an arm, turned ashen. After he spoke, he got up and left the table. The merchant at that table laughed coldly. What a joke. It's just scrap metal, and he treats it like a treasure. The surrounding people all turned their attention. When that cultivator heard that, he blushed heavily. He became extremely embarrassed and increased his pace. Xiao Chen walked over and stopped him. That person glared at Xiao Chen somewhat angrily and said, "What do you want? Are you still selling the copper bell in your hand? I'm somewhat interested." Xiao Chen smiled faintly. The cultivator smiled coldly. Are you trying to take advantage? I risked my life to obtain it, and you want to take advantage of that? There is no chance of that happening. Xiao Chen smiled softly and said nothing. He placed an inferior grade spirit stone in the cultivator's pocket. When the cultivator placed his left hand in his pocket, he was astonished. For you, many thanks. He passed the copper bell to Xiao Chen and gave him a deep bow. Without saying anything else, he immediately left Liusheng Pavilion. Xiao Chen watched as he left. He could not help but sigh. Such is the path of cultivating. To live a glorious life, one has to experience dangers that far surpasses what an ordinary person would by 10,000 times. However, once they are severely injured, they can only live life as an ordinary person. That person was lucky to have met Xiao Chen. Many cultivators who had the same misfortune as him would not be even able to stay warm or get food after they became crippled. They could only live a miserable life. At this moment, a manservant suddenly came over and said to Xiao Chen, "Distinguished guest, our young master invites you up." Xiao Chen was mildly astonished. I have already changed my appearance. How did the fatty recognize me? Xiao Chen was filled with doubt. He put away the copper bell and followed the manservant, heading directly to the 5th floor. On the 5th floor, the fatty's familiar face watched as Xiao Chen came up. He laughed loudly and patted Xiao Chen's back violently and said, "Damn. You're really capable. Despite the noble clan searching for you for so long, you still have not been found. What's up now? Are you here to ask for this fat lord's help in escaping?" Xiao Chen smiled faintly and tried to clarify his doubts. The fatty gestured for Xiao Chen to sit. Then, he opened his signature folding fan and fanned himself. He smiled smugly. This fat lord's intelligence is just a little higher than most people. I knew if you came into the city, you would change your appearance. However, the ring on your finger would not change. Thus, I handed out a drawing of your ring to every manservant. I told them to immediately bring anyone wearing such a ring to me. Xiao Chen looked at the universe ring on his finger and frowned slightly. He did not expect, after all his planning, there would be such an obvious loophole. Xiao Chen recollected his thoughts and looked at the fatty. He asked, "That day on the stone platform. After I left, did you see what Chu Chaoyun did?" The fatty shook his head and sighed. "No, when you flew off, we all left the stone platform. No one noticed what Chu Chaoyun did. When we returned, the coffin and the corpse, as well as Chu Chaoyun, vanished." After hearing this, Xiao Chen frowned slightly. He thought about it carefully. He managed to clarify some of the doubts he had about this trip to the ancient remnant. However, Chu Chaoyun and the coffin vanished together. He did not understand this. Although the Tianmu emperor was not from the ancient era, he comprehended the laws of heaven and earth and comprehended his own Tao. The body automatically emitted a Tao that rejected spatial rings. It was not possible to place the body in a spatial ring. Yet, it disappeared together with such a huge coffin. How did that happen? Aside from cultivating in the past month, Xiao Chen had been thinking about the events of the trip to the ancient remnant. He felt there was someone behind the scene, manipulating the events and turning everyone else into chess pieces. Xiao Chen asked the fatty, "Have you ever thought about how the Zhang clan obtained the ancient remnant map?" No outsiders knew how the Zhang clan obtained the ancient remnant map. It seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, without leaving any trace behind. Then, it was coincidentally leaked, dragging the noble clans of the Dongming province into it. Finally, no one expected the Zhang clan actually had a backer, the Ji clan, who was not afraid of the noble clans. Everything fell into a delicate balance. No one was able to explore the ancient remnant alone, they could only go in together. Jin Dabao took out several drawings of different ages. All these drawings were incredibly ancient, they all gave off an aura of age. The oldest one was estimated by Xiao Chen to be at least 3,000 years old. The fatty slowly spoke. I reacted to that too late. Before we entered the ancient remnant, I felt something was wrong. Thus, I ordered my people to gather all the news of ancient remnants in Dongming province. In the end, I only obtained the results a few days ago. The final destination of all these drawings was the underground palace we went to. I checked it out. The earliest drawing was made when the Tianwu dynasty had just collapsed. Xiao Chen was astonished. The Tianwu dynasty had collapsed 5,000 years ago. That is to say, this had been planned out 5,000 years ago and lasted all the way to today. Thinking of the strange stone platform and the countless corpses on it, Xiao Chen said with some disbelief, "Are you saying someone is trying to revive the Tianwu emperor? It is obvious there is an ancient formation below the stone platform absorbing the life force and spiritual energy of everyone before gathering them all in one place." The fatty rubbed his head. He said, "That should not be possible. In the entirety of the Tianwu continent's history, a method to revive the dead has never been mentioned before. Even the great emperor did not have any way to do so. There were many mentions of reanimating the dead, but those do not retain the memories of their previous lives." Xiao Chen thought about it and agreed. Reviving a dead person went against the cycle of the Tao. If it happened, there would be a great change in the laws of heaven and earth. What do you think about the countless headless martial sages on the stone platform? Xiao Chen remembered there was still a broken sword in his universe ring. Until today, he was unable to make out anything special from it. He wanted to see if he could pry some information from the fatty. Jin Dabao took out a particularly ancient drawing and said, "This is the drawing from 1,000 years ago. That period was the greatest period of the great Qin nation. Regardless of the province, Dongming province, Zaihe province, or Nanling province, there were many geniuses. The people who went during the time were the people at the peak. Every one of them were martial sages. According to my understanding, that should have been the final time, but it seemed like someone spoiled their plans. Thus, we were able to go on this trip now. The person who planned this seemed more and more frightening when they thought about it. He was even able to get martial sages to dance in the palm of their hands. It was unknown who was the one to spoil their plans, but his cultivation was definitely not low." The fatty muttered to himself for a while before saying, "According to the situation of that period, there was only one person in the great Qin nation who could do so." "Who?" Thunder Emperor Sang Mu. Jin Dabao enunciated every word slowly. The Thunder Emperor was the last martial emperor of the great Qin nation. He was also the strongest person in the great Qin nation. His whereabouts in his latter years were unknown. My guess is that he was definitely related to this. Xiao Chen was not too surprised, he had already made the same guess as the fatty. The wounds on the neck of those martial sages were indeed scars resulting of electricity. When Ao Zhao finally woke up, he could try asking her. As the weapon spirit of Thunderwood Sword, she should know something. "You seem to have forgotten someone," Xiao Chen said. He did not continue to pursue the answer to the previous question. Jin Dabao smiled faintly. "I know who you are talking about. Chu Chaoyun, right? I can only say this person is very mysterious and very strong. It is best you don't offend him." "Don't offend him." However, Xiao Chen had a feeling he would end up fighting him sooner or later. This was a gut feeling that did not have any base, and there was no evidence or reason to it, it was just a feeling. After obtaining the information, Xiao Chen got up and prepared to take his leave. The fatty hurriedly pulled him back, saying, "You really don't need me to help you escape. The people of the noble clans are all hunting you down." Xiao Chen smiled faintly. "There is no need." "That's right, please get someone to bring me some fish porridge. I have some need for it." The fatty summoned a waiter to make Xiao Chen some fish porridge. He then said, "That's right, at this moment, the noble clans and the Zhang clan are in Savage Forest. Whitewater City is much safer. However, Brother Xiao, aren't you forgetting something? Xiao Chen asked with some confusion. What? The fatty chuckled and took out a promissory note. He said, Brother Xiao, surely you haven't forgotten so quickly about this promissory note. Furthermore, it's the same to you whether you sell the treasures of the noble clan to anyone, so you might as well sell them to me. If you do so, I'll consider the debt settled. I did forget about this. Xiao Chen thought for a while. He did not need those things either. Thus, he took all the spirit weapons, battle armor, ancient martial techniques, and medicinal pills out from the universe ring. The treasures piled up like a small mountain on the tiny table. The fatty watched till his eyes almost popped out. After a long time, he could not help but laugh loudly. After a long time, the fatty saw Xiao Chen looking at him strangely. He quickly stopped laughing and said, I could not help myself. I could not help myself. That right, aren't there still spirit stones? They are good stuff. Every one of the 3 noble clans had some with them. This fatty was not just greedy on an ordinary level. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, you can forget about the spirit stones. These are what I'm selling. Pay half of it to me with spirit stones and the other half with gold tails banknotes. The fatty's previously smiling face immediately became bitter. He said, Brother Xiao, let me tell you this, it is easy to get banknotes, but spirit stones are more problematic. Xiao Chen thought for a while, and he responded, then change it all to banknotes. However, please get it all ready by tomorrow morning. Chances are, I will not show up in Dongming province again. The fatty knew about Xiao Chen's circumstance. He said, no problem. Here are 20 essence light arrows. Miss Xiao asked me to pass them to you before she left. Xiao Chen received the essence light arrows the fatty passed to him, and he suddenly thought of a problem. His expression changed as he said, you damn fatty. Su Xiao gave the essence light arrows last time, right? The fatty smiled awkwardly and quickly put away all the items on the table. He then fled rapidly. The answer to the question was obvious. The fatty was clearly feeling guilty. Early in the morning, Xiao Chen received 8 million gold taels from the fatty and left Liusheng Pavilion. 8 million gold taels was a big fortune. Even the annual income of Whitewater City's Zhang clan was not that much. Not long after Xiao Chen left Liusheng Pavilion, he immediately felt an indistinct killing intent extending around him. Xiao Chen was startled and extended his spiritual sense. The merchant who was speaking to the cultivator with the missing arm the previous night led a few martial grand masters and was following behind Xiao Chen carefully. They hid very well. If it were not for the lack of control over their killing intent, Xiao Chen would never have discovered them. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and walked towards a desolate alley. Then he dashed into it. The group of people followed quickly. The alley was a dead end, but they did not see Xiao Chen. The leader could not help but curse, where is he? Where did he run to? Fellows, are you looking for me? Xiao Chen descended slowly from the sky and blocked the entrance to the alley. The leader was startled before he started smiling. He laughed loudly, we were just looking for you, and you came out by yourself. Hand over all the spirit stones on you, otherwise, don't blame me for being vicious. Xiao Chen's expression did not change. He smiled faintly, I don't seem to have any grudge with any of you, there is no need to force me into such a state.